What's happening, everyone? On today's episode, I wanted to talk about the importance of gold in Elden Ring because it's a reoccurring theme and it's pretty much a core foundation of the game and what we continue to see throughout our playthroughs. So it's already kind of been talked about how Miyazaki has sort of combined these ideas of alchemy into the game. And we see that even with Radagon and Marika, and how a lot of people in the community have talked about the similarities of them being the rebus, which is a symbol in alchemy that is a conjoined, kind of fully realized form, which is both male and female. And then you can even go on to talk about the Flask of Wondrous Physic, which literally is us creating alchemy in its purest form. It's how we get all our attributes, things like that. We can make it into anything we want. We're literally mixing and creating some sort of alchemy here in this physic mix, which I think it's really a cool way of bringing alchemy into the story in that way. We also hear a lot about the unalloyed or unalloyed gold, which unalloyed means pure, such as, if we think about the needle that Miquella makes for his sister, and her armor actually is also made out of it in hopes of stopping the scarlet rot. So pure gold, in all essence, doesn't tarnish. So I think it's pretty safe to say that we as players are not deemed pure because we are, as you know, tarnished. There's also many references to Mercury in the game, although not said outright. And Sir Isaac Newton wrote in an unpublished manuscript where he talks about a living Mercury that makes gold swell and spring forth in sprouts and branches. This makes me think of the Erd Tree a lot and how it sprouts in multiple places throughout the lands between, but also hides the frenzied flame, which could technically boil it all down into its primordial form. The fingerprint set also reminds me of Mercury a lot in this way. It's also interesting to me that in order to obtain this frenzy flame, we have to be burned by the three fingers, as if we ourselves are being reforged by it. Similarly, I also think a lot about the Quicksilver bullet that we see in Bloodborne, which also has a similar fingerprint attached to it, much like the fingerprint helm. Just some really cool similarities that I see between the games and what importance it could be in terms of alchemy in this game. Aristotle himself had believed that metals, including gold, grew in the ground, much like seeds. He even went on to say, just as seeds grow into more perfect plants and children grow into more perfect adults, so should all metals eventually attain the ideal form of gold. It's quite possible the demigods in this game seek to become perfect ideal forms of themselves through obtaining shards of the Elden Ring. Even the Macuna people of Brazil believed that gold contained the light of the sun and the stars. I think it's really interesting that Elden Ring is filled to the brim with lore about the stars and how the gods, Radon of course in particular, could command them. I think it's a really fun way of linking these characters to alchemy, especially when we think about the importance of the color red. Red is so often associated with Mercury, and I think it's interesting that Radagon's children share that trait, and how the war with their golden siblings still wages on, even now. Radagon himself despised these reddish locks, and it seems to always be, a point of anger and frustration for him. We see how hard he strives to sort of be better and greater than what he was made to be. Even leaving his first wife, Renala, in order to be part of the Golden Order and merge into being part of Marika. Dragons and serpents always had their place in FromSoft lore, but I think what's really interesting that if we're looking at it as a place from alchemy point of view, they're considered the catalyst in which makes alchemy possible. So in a lot of ways, everything that's happening in this world could not happen without dragons and without serpents. I mean, we see all these cults sort of sprouting up. We have churches dedicated to the dragons. So it's clear that these two entities are extremely important in this game, and also in relation to how alchemy is formed.
Vast and not easily consumed. Dear Rykard, please find purchase within me. I wish to be your serpent, your family. One day, let us devour the gods together. Dear Rykard, I wish to be one day.
In Elden Ring, these two entities sort of serve as a precursor of what came before. Even when we fight Placidux, we could see that his body is made out of gold and stone. So I think it's really cool to sort of see that. And if we're talking about gold and the Golden Order, interesting to see how there was some sort of order already in place. And I think that comes into a really important talking point if you're thinking about the fact that gold itself can actually not be destroyed. It can only be reformed. So as we're playing this game, and, through the endings and everything that's going on, we see that it's just kind of a continuous loop. You're changing the order, you're either upholding what's already there, or you're reforging it into a different type of order, but nothing is fully destroyed. There is going to be some remnants of what was there before. There's also this really cool book that I found that's called The Scarlet Woman and the Ancient Mercurial Serpent. And it's all about alchemy and magic, and some of the chapters are like how to achieve the serpent, transformation of the snake into the winged dragon. And just to read the description, which I think is really fucking cool, it says, as an outer adept, they shine the light of their sun towards the earth, while an inner adept turns around and faces the infinite stars of Nuit and Babylon. The Avatar, according to Crowley, is the balance between these roles. The Avatar acts as a channel, bringing Gnosis, which I'm assuming is some sort of god, from above to the below. The receiver on Earth can either be female or male, claiming the title of a Scarlet Woman or the Beast. Just kind of cool. I'm into it. I just think the name is pretty significant considering Scarlet Rot and everything like that. I don't know how in-depth Miyazaki went into some of this stuff, but I think it's interesting that this stuff is out there and it clearly exists in some form. Perhaps one of my all-time favorite correlations, though, is about the Great Alexander, who you could probably argue is named after Alexander the Great, who had a vast interest in gold and alchemy and was even taught by Aristotle, who he took with him to Egypt, where the Egyptians had a very sophisticated knowledge about goldsmithing. One woman in particular is only known as Marie, and she was a Jewish woman who lived in Egypt around 100 AD and conducted experiments with mercury and other metals, attempting to change their properties into gold by various heating procedures and methods. She invented the double boiler, also known as the bain-maries, and it's essentially a heating pot meant to expedite the process. And as we know, Alexander is a giant pot who constantly heats himself in stronger flames to become, stronger, boiling the bodies inside of himself. Alas, Alexander will never become golden, though, not even when he devours the body of Radon. We do know that jars are poached for their shards and innards due to the magical power locked within them, and it seems like it's a power that can alter what's contained inside it. What's also interesting to me is that they have red lids with the Erd tree emblazoned on them, red again becoming a very significant color. Just another tidbit that I think it's really, really cool of how they're playing off this sort of alchemy thing. And again, this is just my interpretation and just some research that I've done on it. Doesn't mean that it has to really literally go in that direction. I just think it's really interesting how much thought was put into it in terms of this kind of thing, if we're going into a segment about alchemy. Ultimately, though, like I said before, it's important to note that gold cannot be destroyed, only melted and reforged. It makes me wonder if that's why the Golden Order is so afraid of the Giants and the Frenzied Flame in particular, as these are the only two components in the game that can actually melt it all away and are very conveniently sealed away from the player. I think no matter the ending we choose, gold will always remain in some form of its original self. However, it's all on the player on how they wish to reforge it. Well, anyway, thanks for watching and listening to my rant about gold. It's just some stuff that I looked up and I got really into and was up late all last night thinking about it, and I was like, oh, I should do a video on this, just because I know the community's been talking a lot about it, and sort of the importance that alchemy plays in this game. And those are just some things that I've noticed and I thought was really, really cool and interesting, and just wanted to talk about, maybe bring to some other players' attentions to think about while they're playing. But either way, have a fun rest of your day, y'all, and thanks again for watching. Remember, not all that glitters is gold.